Solution.org podcast coming your way, episode 461 Q&A. 5 great Q&As coming your way. Steve Schmee and the Rickster, Ricky V. Rock. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, what's up, Steve? What's up, guys? How's everybody doing out there?
So we're laughing kind of on the pre-show on The Price is Right. There was a woman, she won a prize, and they told her, you win a trip to New Hampshire. And she did not want that at all. So we were kind of laughing at on the pre-show. She's expecting something to Fiji or Hawaii and all this stuff, but I don't know. I wouldn't mind a trip to New Hampshire. Nice, quiet place, not too many people. That to me would be a good vacation rather than going, somewhere that was packed. But we're going to talk about that on this show. We're going to talk about
even she didn't want to go to historic New Hampshire.
I mean, I would, man, just to go in the mountains and be away from everybody, that would be something I need for sure. But we're going to talk about that later in the show because we're going to ask Rick about countries he's been to where he can walk into the pharmacy and got something. We've talked about this before, but we're going to get more in depth on this one. So we're going to really pick his brain. If you ever dreamt about a vacation where you can just go and fuck, use steroids and lift and eat for 2 weeks, that would be a cool vacation, right? So we're going to talk to Rick about that. He's going to give us some country options for that, for those of you out there who want to take a little 2-week fun time. So let's get to the first one, though, guys. We're going to talk about this. This is one for Rick, too. Rick knows a lot about this as well because he's used actual testosterone from a pharmacy. So let's talk about this one. Difference between testosterone from the pharmacy versus lab. So I can tell you the first time I used steroids, I actually ordered pharmacy grade Sustanon, and it was the Pakistani Organon, and I think it was Decadurabolin Organon. Those were my first couple cycles. And let me tell you something, man, it was amazing. It was an amazing cycle. So, back in those days, it was expensive, though. You'd order international, and this was like 15 years ago. You'd order international, it would be really expensive, and it would take forever to get to your doorstep. And they would hit you with shipping, like $50-$60 shipping on top of it. So back in those days, it was crazy. Now it's so cheap. You have underground labs all over the place. They've driven down the market on these products. I mean, we're talking about you can get a vial of testosterone for like $40-$50 now, and it's ridiculous. So Rick, I'll bring you in on this one. Tell us what your opinion of the difference is between testosterone from a pharmacy and lab.
Okay, so there's a couple of things to consider. The things that you can notice happening, and the things that you won't quite right away notice happening. The number one, obviously, is the effects, the results you get. Whenever you get legitimate pharmaceutical grade testosterone, that thing is going to be within 1 or 2% of the label claims. So if you're paying for an ampule of 250 milligrams, that amp is going to be at 250 milligrams or very close to it. And not only that, but the raw material that it's made from, the pharmaceutical company would have tested it beforehand, and it would have tested at about 99 to 98% purity. So you get a really good, legitimate, pure product all the way through. When it comes to underground lab steroid, I had a podcast interview with a guy who said, hey, back when I used to be involved in a underground lab, the guy was telling me, he said that he would put in about 10 to 20% more of the claimed label strength for the products he was making. So if he was making that 250 milligram per cc testosterone, he would be putting in 270, 280, just to give his customers some more, he said. Now, don't know, and I don't think I asked them this, but I'm pretty sure that the majority of underground labs guys are not testing their products, are not testing the raw materials when they come in. And so putting in an extra 10, 20% is just a surefire way to make sure that if your raws aren't up to par, if you're only at 80% a purity, if whatever, then the guy on the customer end who's injecting this stuff, and if he's someone with experience, he'll know he's getting the right amounts that he is paying for, right? So sometimes they will just put in more, and that's kind of, or they'll put in just the right amount, but the raw materials are shit. Or sometimes during the process, they'll lose some material, and they won't realize that the final product is actually less strong as what they set out to make. So something that, so when they're trying to make maybe something that's 250 milligrams per cc, they end up with 200 and change, 210, 220, 230 milligrams per cc. They just don't know it. And these are kind of mishaps that really happen with some of these kind of bottom tier, mid tiers, underground labs, is just the quality control and testing the raws when they come in, for impurities, for heavy metals, for potency, then testing the final product again for heavy metals, for impurities, for potency. These are just some steps that some of the middle tier guys just don't take, especially some of the guys just getting jugs, vials to put their labels on with the finished product already. I mean, they don't know what they're getting. So on the user end, are you going to notice a difference? Look, if you get something that's overdosed a little bit, you're going to think it's strong and it's great. If you get something that is underdosed because of either impurity or because the guy just didn't lost some material in the process, and too uneducated in the process to realize he's losing material. Some of it is clumping up, it's crystallizing. He's just losing it. There's different ways that you could kind of fuck that process up, and he doesn't realize what's going on, and he makes something that's 10% weaker than what he set out to make, even if his raws were pretty decent. And then as the user, you'll notice that, especially if you have some experience, and you're using standalone compounds, you'll notice, if you're doing TRT and you're taking a couple 100 milligrams every 10 days, and you decide to just save money or your insurance or whatever, you can't cover anymore, you're going to go underground for those same 200 mgs every 10 days. And then the shit just works different. Maybe it's a little stronger, gives you some side effects because the guy put more in it. Maybe it's weaker and you don't feel the same. It's just, it can be hit or miss. And then there's the other component, which is the contaminants, the heavy metals, the other stuff that could be in it. Look, guys, China's kind of cracked down on these raw materials, and a lot of times they're being illegally made, by plants that aren't supposed to be making them. And when things like that happen, they might use some of the same machinery, trace processes, whatever, that they do in some other materials that aren't meant for human consumption. Everything from pesticides to commercial lubricants to whatever, who knows? And so you might get some additional contamination in those batches of powder in the way of heavy metals, maybe other contaminants we're not really on the lookout for. Do you remember, Steve, back in the day, how a lot of vitamins, regular, just vitamins for your grandmammy, were getting pulled off the shelf because they contained trace amounts of prohormones and some steroids and stuff? And this is a real problem.
Wow, that's horrible. Yeah.
There were trace amounts, like tiny amounts. And the reason that was happening is because during the heyday of the prohormones, there were I'm talking about a lot of manufacturers of supplement, of over-the-counter supplements that are sold in pharmacies or sold other places, making runs of prohormones. Sometimes some of the larger brands don't really have their own manufacturing, or maybe they get large orders that are too far outside of what their manufacturing can handle. So they'll contract some jobs out, 10,000 bottles here, 20,000 bottles there, out of 100,000 bottle order they might have for Walmart, let's say, as a possible example. And one of these manufacturers that's making a chunk of that run that's going to this huge chain store, he might have been running prohormones for a buddy of his on the side, somewhat. and then stuff gets contaminated. And this happened. This is a good 10 years where there were a lot of problems with cross contamination. It went up to the point now that there are some nutritional supplement manufacturing facilities that get a special certification called WADA Sport. I think it's called WADA Sport. And under these, if you get this certification for your facility, then you can't even have anything in your facility that wouldn't be allowed for a competitor that's overseen by WADA for doping. So even like 7-keto DHEA, which is completely legit and legal to sell over the counter. A lot of places do. You can't have it in your facility. It can't even exist in your facility because of the danger of cross contamination. And why is that relevant? Well, if a facility makes some crystalline steroid hormone for a client in the same machinery and using the same equipment and stuff that they've maybe ran some pesticides for a little banana republic country that still sells that old nasty pesticide that maybe other countries abandoned. Who fucking knows? But they use the same stuff, and there's a good chance of cross-contamination happening. It happened with U.S. supplement manufacturers, contamination of previous products that were being made with the same kind of equipment. Why couldn't we assume that something like that could happen in a Chinese lab somewhere? It's only really like the pharmaceutical companies, or like the top tier, really top tier name of UG brands that are able to really get the good, clean raw materials that are not going to have some contaminants. And that's the aspect that's maybe not so apparent right away. When you are taking your steroids, you might, if you have enough experience, you might notice if they change the product out for something else, something cheaper, changed out for something stronger. You might be able to tell that if it's up to label claim or not, just from previous experience running this dose. But you won't be able to tell right away that you got some heavy metals in that shot, or that you have some other contaminant that's maybe not going to have an immediate health effect, but will build up over time and over the shots. There are some contaminants, especially some kind of synthetic contaminants, and even some of these metals that are really hard for your body to get rid of. Like, your body won't just get rid of them. Like, they'll accumulate over time. So that's just kind of a big long spiel on steroids and manufacturing. I did a whole episode on it on the Elite Fitness podcast, guys. If you guys want to go check out elitefitness.com, look on the top right podcast. I did a couple episodes all about how some of these steroid manufacturing works. But yeah, that's all I got to say about that for this show.
Yeah, it's a good explanation. So the next one I'll lead off on: are there any anabolic steroids that you hate now? So for me, I want to say I hate. Hate is a very strong word. I try not to hate anything. But steroids that I've grown not to like, I think DECA for me, the way it increases my appetite, that's not something I like, because I'm already a voracious eater as it is. So I've always been like that. I grew up one of those people who just ate a ton of food. I never gained weight. So I was definitely I grew up like an ectomorph. So as an adult, it's the same thing. Like, I like to eat a lot of food, good nutritious food, obviously, but I like to eat. And when I take DECA, I just can't get satiated on the stuff. So that's one that I don't like. Another one that I definitely don't like, Superdrol. And the reason I don't like Superdrol is because the fatigue factor. I like to be in control of my body throughout the day. I don't like to be tired during the day. I don't like to have to take a nap during the day. And that's what happens on Superdrol, because it's so damn toxic in the body and it strains your organs so much that it makes me feel like crap. And, you get tired on it. And then to top it off, it's hard to sleep on it too. It fucks with your sleep. So you're tired all day and then you have a hard time sleeping. It's toxic. It's just so strong. It's such a strong steroid. That I will never touch that again. Hard to believe they used to have super. You were just talking about that, Rick, but it's hard to believe they used to sell Super Droll clones online over the counter. You can just buy it, as supplements. You can just buy them with a credit card online. So it's really hard to believe, because if you run blood work before and during Super Droll, you're on it 3 weeks, run blood work, and you'll be in shock at what happens to your blood work. Most of your parameters are going to be off. So it's really, really, really a toxic steroid to mess with. Also, Trenbolone. As much as Trenbolone was good to me back in the day, it did a lot of things for me, made me really strong, and maybe the biggest and strongest I've ever been in my life. Today, I would say it's not something that I would like. Again, I don't like the way it makes me feel. It makes me feel hot all the time. It makes me feel dehydrated all the time. It kills my cardio. And just like Super Droll, it makes me feel like I'm carrying like weight on my shoulders all day. And it's a really, really, it just warps the energy from me. So I like to be high energy. I like to be in control of my body as much as I can. So these types of steroids that really, really mess with me and make me, super hungry, or make me super tired, or mess with my sleep, or make me super hot, it's not something that I really like. How about you, Rick? What's one that you've grown to hate over the years?
That's a hard question for me, because I don't think I particularly hate any steroid. There's definitely some that are just not for me. Some of the harsher orals that I've tried, just not for me. Nowadays, the only orals I'll really mess with is like Anavar, maybe Winstrol, maybe Turinabol. That's about it. I don't really come out of that zone, out of those three nowadays, very rarely. I've messed with some of the 1 DHEA, 4 DHEA, 19 Nor DHEA, 5-OHP, some of those non-methylated prohormones I've been messing with, and just kind of watching how my body reacts to them. But I wouldn't say I hate Anadrol. I just wouldn't use it, because for my goals, there are other products that are probably more conducive to my goals. Same thing with Dianabol. I don't hate Dianabol. I think it's a great product. If I used it, maybe I would drop in a little bit of like 10 mgs during a cycle, right? I'm already using other stuff as a backdrop to where my hormone levels are. And then I would just drop Dianabol as a 10 milligram, pre-workout, maybe, some days. Again, just on top of other steroids, I would take like a scoop of N2KTS. And actually I would want to take maybe the Dianabol 1 to 2 hours before my workout. So I'd hit like Dianabol like an hour and a half before my workout. Then the N2KTS, as I'm getting to the gym. And really, that would be a really nice fucking stack, because I would have stimulants, nitrogen retention agents, and the strong steroid with me. But it's about all I would really do with Dianabol. I don't mess with it anymore. Trenbolone. There was a time in this podcast for a good 100 episodes where I just said, don't use it. Now I've messed with it again, but now I just 100 milligrams a week. That's it. Of Anathate. That's it. Just 100, maybe 200. Maybe 200. I might get up that high on some weeks where I plan a particularly hard a training week that I plan. That's how I'm rocking with that. Deca, a lot of respect for Deca. It fucks with my dick. It really, really does. So maybe on a cycle when I'm using a lot of other stuff, I might drop it in at 50 mgs per week, or 100 mgs every 2 weeks. 100 mgs every 2 weeks. But again, that's on a backdrop of like testosterone EQ. Maybe Winstrol on top of that. Doing something, mainly Anabar. If I'm going to drop a little Deca, I probably wouldn't be using the Winstrol. I'd be dropping the Deca. I'd be dropping Anabar on that stack with the test and the EQ. So there's stuff that I just didn't have a use for, and I don't fuck around with really, like halotestin or methyltrenbolone or some of that stuff. I can't say I hate those, because I never gave those really a good chance, a good shot. to really know them, understand them. Really, I think I'm going to rephrase the question a little bit. Are there any steroids you hate now? At my level of understanding in the game right now, really, what it comes down to is there's just a few compounds that become go-to compounds for me. I know what a little bit of test, a little bit of EQ, and maybe a little bit of anabar to can do together, maybe 100 mgs of Trembolone on top of it. Like I know what those things can do. And when the changes aren't happening at the rate that I want them to, when my body maybe is not developing or not acting the way I need it to, I want it to, I start looking more at my training, lifestyle habits, diet. I look at those things first, not the compounds. Like I've already settled in on the 4 or 5, maybe 6 steroids that I really mess with and go to. There are some SARMs I'm adding in. There's peptides I'm planning on experimenting on. But I've just got my go-to compounds. And when things aren't doing what they should be, I look at my diet and training first. I don't sit there and think that maybe I'm a little watery or maybe I'm, my 6-pack is not as sharp or maybe I haven't been able to do the same kind of reps and weights the last 2 weeks that I was doing last month, even as a mid-cycle, dumb things like that. I don't sit there and think, oh, I guess I just need to double the trend. No, fuck that. Like I'm looking at my training. What am I doing? Am I sleeping enough? Am I eating right? Why is my mood like this? What else am I doing? What kind of diet am I having? Is there enough fiber in my diet? Am I getting all of my nutrition? Am I getting what's going on? I look at all these other things. So you really should, as you gain knowledge and as you experiment with these compounds, the best is just to settle in on just a few that work for you, that don't make your face break out all fucking nasty, that don't give you like problems with anxiety, with problems with not being able to sleep right, your dick not acting right. The settling on the ones that you can manage and kind of gel well with what you got going on, and you'll be good. I really think that I've said on the podcast, there are guys that just aren't built for steroid use, and their first little bottle of pro hormones they get over the counter or something, they broke out, lactating nipples, things like that, and they just left. They never tried performance enhancement drugs ever again. I think some of those people, maybe they got started with that one compound or the family of compounds that kind of was going to give them bad side effects. And if people like that would take a step back, then try a different angle, try a different compound, maybe get away from 19 Norse, look towards more DHT derivative like compounds, just go back to just base test with a couple of auxiliaries. Like you'll find that kind of steroid, that structure that your body does well with, that your body really can take to. In my case, those steroids work well for me. I'm prone to gynecomastia. I will have issues with acne here and there. There are things so those compounds are really kind of, the ones I mentioned are real kind of easy for me to work with. And obviously keeping the doses low. When things aren't moving along, when things are not, if I set a goal for myself, like, hey, I want to take some before and afters for a little marketing for my social. And then, 2-3 weeks in, things are not moving along the way I want them to. I rarely do I sit there and think, oh, I need to up my dose. No, I'm like, all right, well, I need to get tighter on my diet, or I'm not. I can usually see where I'm fucking up, or maybe I'm in the gym. I'm getting a little lazy. I'm not pushing out those last couple reps. I know that's why my body responds to. So that's it. It's just a long answer, but that's all I have for you on that topic.
All right, so we're going to get to the vacation one next, but before we get to it, we have to talk a little bit about clenbuterol. So clenbuterol is a drug. It's not a steroid, and it's classified as a sympathomimetic amine or amine, and used by sufferers of breathing disorders, and it's a bronchodilator. So asthma, make breathing easier. And, it's available by prescription only. and it's sold, bodybuilders take it orally. There's also oral solution that it's made in, but bodybuilders will have used clenbuterol. Many have used clenbuterol over the years. And it does some things in the body when it comes to weight loss. And that's why bodybuilders used it. So back in the day, you'd have people like Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, Victoria Beckham, celebrities, singers who have used it, and they had good results on it. Me personally, I've used it a couple times. I felt like I was having like a heart attack on the stuff. Like I would basically in the evenings, it got to the point where I was on it for like a week, and in the evenings I'd have like a big meal, and it felt like I was like getting heartburn. Like I had to lay down. I was in so much pain. And I don't know what this stuff did to me. I think it just fucks with your heart too much. The thing is, like bodybuilders use a dosage. So bodybuilders will usually start off with like 40, 50, 60 micrograms. And then you're supposed to up it 10 to 20 micrograms every few days until you get it up to 100 micrograms, 120, 140 micrograms. So what I notice is once I get over 80, once I get over 100 micrograms, the side effects will start coming on. Another big side effect that I had was my hands started shaking randomly throughout the day. So that's how clenbuterol works for weight loss, but it's just a shitty way to lose weight. And it really, I just don't think it works that well. Like you're going to tell me that something like this that makes you shaky and gives you heartburn and it destroys your cardio. You're telling me that's going to be good, for fat loss. And I'll tell you, go run a couple laps after the gym. That's healthy for your heart, right? So, for me, I think it's a shitty drug. I would say over the years on the forums, I'd say less than 15%, maybe even less than 10% of guys actually said, yeah, I use Clen and I shredded up on it. And, most of the guys, they run it and they're like, this is garbage. Like, so I think in 2022, it's just a garbage drug to use for weight loss. I think we know much more effective ways to lose weight, much more effective things to take to lose weight. So I just don't think it's a good option. And like, it's amazing the amount of people, the amount of athletes that have been busted for clenbuterol over the years. You've got people from swimmers to baseball players to cyclists to soccer players. I just don't get it. I don't get the why these guys would even mess with it. You had a hockey player got busted for it. Carter Ashton, I remember that. He got suspended for 20 games. So I don't understand why they would even use it. Why would they use this stuff? The only thing I can think of is they're using an amount that's small enough where it's helping their endurance. But in terms of fat loss, it makes no sense to use it for endurance because it kills your endurance. So it's just flabbergasting. You got boxers. It's amazing, Rick. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't get why anybody would use this shit today. So, but like I said, 15% of people swear by it and they love it. But overall, it's just a shitty. It's like taking ephedrine, and thinking it's going to help with your athleticism, and it doesn't. It kills your athleticism because anything that's is a stimulant that fucks with your heart is going to. It's like an engine. It's like going in your car and just pushing down on the gas while in neutral and just revving up your engine. That's what you're doing here. So to me, it doesn't make much sense. I've never really understood it. It's definitely, I would say, fallen out of favor over the years. I'd say year over year, in the past 15 years, I've noticed on forums, it's fallen out of favor more and more. That's what I've noticed. But I think 15 years ago, because of these celebrities, I think a lot of people were interested in it. So Rick, give us what are your thoughts on Clen?
So I'll start telling you guys kind of what the place of Clen was at the start of this thing years and years ago. Uh, then I'll kind of tell you why you shouldn't use it. But Clen, look, for a long time, Clen was used before cycles and after cycles. Guys believed that it would help clear your androgen receptors to make your steroids more effective before a cycle. And a lot of guys felt that it would help you work as an anti-catabolic that was allowing you to recover, was allowing you to recover from suppression while being anti-catabolic, because clenbuterol has been known as that fat burner that is also anti-catabolic, puts on a little bit of mass. And I think that's more true for women than for men. I think women get more of an anti-catabolic kind of muscle building, muscle toning effect from clenbuterol than men do. I think for men, the guys who take it really are mostly in it for the fat loss side, for the fat loss effects. But I think in the case of a female that doesn't want to take an androgen like Anavar, but would like to gain muscle tone at a faster rate than natural, clenbuterol might not actually be that bad of an option. You know, if we're talking about harm reduction here, right? Supposed to taking a steroid, you could try Clen in a very conservative manner. Still, let me tell you guys why you shouldn't use Clen. Clen can have other bad side effects. Enlarging of the heart has been one of the side effects that most people are afraid of with clenbuterol. You might have some, who knows, maybe some more permanent side effects from its use that are going to be long gone, long there, even after you've gained that weight back. You know, even after you've gained some of the fat loss back from clenbuterol. So maybe not the best option for most of us. And also, really, and I've said this a ton of times, before you go out and take a clenbuterol or an albuterol or a DMP or any of these kind of fat loss synthetic drugs, you could just try eating less, you know, eat much less than you're eating now. So instead of punching your central nervous system with stimulants, how about you just fucking eat less? You know, instead of punching your body, your natural central nervous system with compounds to make you burn more calories and stuff, how about you just eat less? And caffeine works to keep you awake while you're in a caloric deficit. I promise you guys, it really, really does. It works. It works very well. So do that. You know, do that shit, guys. That's the way to do it. Don't take weight loss drugs when you could just eat less and train more. And if you do decide to get a little bit of help with your diet, man, there's so many good options over the counter that are not really going to mess you up like a clenbuterol would. Some really kind of smooth stimulants, some really good fat loss agents. Look, caffeine, your Hemby, those are really good fat loss agents. Just those two alone. There's way more stuff out there. I make a couple of products, Entoburn, Entosling, which is completely non-stimulant, no effect on your central nervous system. It works via the insulin pathway. Cortisol, which helps burn fat, helps improve endurance. Huge list of ingredients, all from naturally occurring sources, none of the synthetic stuff. And those are a lot smoother ways to kind of help your progress along. But I just can't think or give anyone justification for taking something like clenbuterol or in that same breath, albuterol DMP, okay, to burn calories when you can just eat less, bro. Like, just eat less. Your body will burn it. Your body will need those calories every single day. Just eat less, bro. You know, and you don't have to go with the drugs. All that being said, if you're getting ready for a show, or if you got a coach that's experienced with these compounds, and you're using these compounds to look your best by a certain date, then it's between you and your coach what you guys do. You know, rock on with it. Rock on with it. That's what you guys want to do. That's your, you know, it's a different story when you're given a date for when you need to look your best and you're about this life and you're trying to build some Instagram grind or some clients for your training, personal training, whatever it is. And this is kind of your life. I can see some justifications because they're dates you need to get ready by. You got a movie role, you got a photo shoot, you got a fucking show, you know, whatever you gotta, you know, whatever you got going on, It's part of your job, the way that you make money. I can kind of sort of give you a buy and say, all right, and you got a coach. You either got a coach or you yourself know how to use it because you've done a couple of cycles under a coach of this clan, and now you know how to fuck with it on your own. I could see that. I could see those angles of the argument really well. But for the most part, for most of you guys out there, especially men, like if you're a dude, clenbuterol is not gonna be anti-catabolic. You'd probably be better off with take my N2 Transderm product, put that on your shoulders twice a day. That'll be a great anti-catabolic, and you could just eat way less than you're eating right now, or do way more cardio than you're doing right now. And then you're going to see some serious improvements. Not only the additional muscle tone from the training, but you're putting less food through your system. Maybe you fast some. That's actually all right. But to continue to eat, not in a caloric deficit, but a surplus, and then take drugs to put you at a deficit, or kind of like that's just, or if you're just at a really soft kind of pussy deficit, you're not really suffering the cows, you're just kind of just under maintenance. Then you're going to take a drug to make the fat loss faster. How about you just get deeper under maintenance and throw in some steroids maybe, or N2 Transderm, something along those lines, or some stack it, GW and S4 Osterin. But if you're taking drugs, but anything but messing with some of these harsh compounds, clan, DMP, this kind of stuff for fat loss, when you could just eat less. It's kind of my final message. That's all.
All right, so next one is for you, Rick. This is the one that we've been waiting for. Which countries have steroids over the counter that you've been to?
Legally over the counter, pretty much none. But anytime you get out of the scope of first world countries, anytime you leave the US, you leave the UK, you leave Australia, you leave New Zealand, you leave Canada, anytime you leave these places and you venture into, I would say third world, maybe second world, depending where you're going. But some of these countries, you're going to be able to walk into a pharmacy and buy them, although legally you're not supposed to. And that's kind of how the pharmacies work in El Mexico, in El Republic of Dominicano. That's how they work in Colombia. That's how they work pretty much everywhere. They'll have some steroids in the pharmacy, and they'll sell them to you without a script, even though legally they're kind of not supposed to. In the US and in England and Australia, there's the same laws in the books about not giving people prescription medications without a prescription, like same kind of laws in the books already, all set to go. But difference is that south of the border and some of these other places, the laws just aren't enforced. They're just not enforced. It's in a lot of these poorer countries, a lot of people use the pharmacist as a doctor. They'll go to the pharmacy and say, hey, I'm having these symptoms. And the pharmacist will go into his memory and say, oh shit, I noticed people have been getting prescribed these medications for this new thing that's getting around. And that's what they'll give them. It saves people the expense on going to a doctor when they could trust a pharmacist to kind of on the spot tell them what they should take. And so the transaction takes place for all intents and purposes between the pharmacist and the person without a doctor being involved. And once a pharmacist, and that happens pretty much across the third world. Yeah, Mexico, you go to Colombia, obviously I have experience with that, and many, many other places. Even some parts of like Eastern Europe, you can go to and it'll be the same. Definitely in places like India, some pharmacies will supply it pretty readily. So it really, some of these places, like I said, people in the neighborhood, instead of having to take a trip to the doctor, sometimes, they have to get on public transportation. They don't have a car, money to pay for a doctor, just to maybe get a prescription, same prescription or the same medications that the pharmacist could just take your money for and give it to you right away. And by the time you're in a culture where this is accepted, then the pharmacist is just going to dispense anything you want. So if you walk in there and you say, hey, I want testosterone. Hey, I want, hey, I want Primabol and Proviron. I want testosterone and decanoate, testosterone and athlete. I want Bayer. I want Pfizer. I want sharing. What do you have? Once you come in and ask for these things, and the pharmacist is used to dispensing without a license, without a prescription, it's just real easy. So pretty much, I think it's much easier to give you a list of the countries where you shouldn't even think you're going to get a pharmacist to just dispense to you without a proper prescription. And those mainly are going to be like your England, Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, France, Italy, you might get lucky. Spain, you might, who knows, you might maybe get lucky in some of the tinier, smaller towns in Spain. Who knows? Could be wrong. And that's kind of around but most of everywhere else you go beyond that. Japan, you might have a hard time getting a pharmacist to dispense it to you. Maybe Singapore, some of these countries where they actually enforce those fucking laws that are on the books. They really care about it. You're going to have a hard time. Hong Kong, you might have a pretty hard time. But, and we're talking specifically pharmacists dispensing right out of the pharmacy, right? Because in those same countries, like let's say you're more likely to find a gym dealer that's be more ready and willing to deal with you in Canada maybe than you would in the US, because the Canadian gym dealer might be worried about not as harsh a penalties as the guy in the US. I don't know. I could be talking on my ass on that one, but I know, for example, that some countries where the pharmacist won't dispense to you, you can usually get those same human grade stuff, or you get some really good UG brands, or some nasty UG brands that are bad also, from guys at the gym or outside quite readily, quite easily, quite no problem. And those could be like, let's say, your Italy or your Greece or something like that, right? You might find a friendly pharmacist, you might not. And if you don't, then there's definitely easy to find at the gym. Those guys aren't that worried about undercover operations to take him down because of Jews. It happens very sporadically, and usually it's tied to other issues those groups are having. So that's kind of like how it is. Just a little, this is from me just keeping my eyes open, talking to guys, definitely reading the forums, talking to guys from different countries all over the forums, and traveling myself quite a bit. This is kind of how I found how these things operate and work. All right. But yeah, I mean, Eastern Europe, most of Asia, most of Africa, pretty much most of Latin America, Central South America, you're gonna be able to walk into a pharmacy and pretty much get any steroid that's legal for human dispense in that country, for anything from testosterone, DECA, Proviron, many things. You get some tamoxifen, you get Novadex, you get Clomid. You can get, in some places, you'll be able to get either Romacin or Femera or both. A few places you'll be able to get Arimidex. And then, if you want sildenafil, tadalafil, vardenafil, any of those thick pills. If you want antibiotics, most of the antibiotics you want. If you want, dewormer, wink, wink, whatever you want. Most of these countries, you walk into a pharmacy and most of them will dispense it. If you walk into a pharmacy at a shopping center or in a mall, you might run into a problem. But if you walk into a pharmacy that you can kind of legitimately tell is like a mom and pop, it's kind of owned by some locals. Maybe someone's running it out of the first floor of their house. Then you can kind of walk in there and get anything you want, as long as you don't look weird, as long as you don't look like a fucking agent or something, like a cop, like a local cop. You most likely to not be able to land whatever you want.
So a couple questions for you. I did Mobster and I, we did on the hardcore, we did Rafael Brandao, who is a top Brazilian bodybuilder, right? And when I was researching about him, it says that in Brazil, steroids are illegal. And also Argentina, steroids are illegal. So you mentioned all of South America, but those two countries, it's illegal. Any idea why those two countries specifically are illegal? but the rest of South America is cool with it.
Like illegal, like criminalized, you mean? Or just prescription? I'm about to search it right now.
Yeah, search it, but it says in Brazil is one of the countries where it's straight up illegal without a prescription. Yeah, without a prescription, I guess.
What basically it is this, buddy. And pretty much every one of these countries, including Mexico or Colombia or Dominican Republic or Brazil, it's in the books that it's kind of illegal for a pharmacist to dispense without a prescription. It's just not something that the law enforcement is actively working on, seeking, caring about. The majority of the cops on the street, if they catch you with some testosterone on you, they might not even fully understand that, you know, you're not supposed to have it without a prescription, or that it's even, I mean, they might not even fully understand what it is, kind of. So it's not a concern. And because it's not a concern, because I'm sure cops go to pharmacists and try to get medications for their children all the time anyway. You just don't get cops caring about it. It just doesn't kind of happen. But like, it's illegal to manufacture steroids and some of these places. It's illegal to dispense some of these medications without a prescription. All of that. It's just not something that's enforced. It's just not something that that anyone is worrying about. It's kind of done out in the open because nobody kind of sort of cares. Same thing with the veterinarian clinics. You can go in and get equipoise, get some of these steroids that are meant for the cattle industry or for the veterinarian use. You go walk in there and buy them because there isn't anyone coming in there to regulate them and count how many bottles of or ampules of testosterone they sold that week and where are all the prescriptions. You know, no, every mom and pop pharmacy in places like Brazil, in places like Mexico, in places like Colombia, if they order 100 or 200 or 500 ampules of Bayer testosterone, testosterone, and they sell out of those month after month, there's not going to be any government official coming to their shop saying, hey, can you show us the photocopies or the prescription records or whatever you have to show you that you dispensed these 500 units to legitimately scripted in patients, individuals. Can you show it? There just isn't anybody that's ever going to come and do that. And so even though it's on the books, they're just not worried about it and they dispense freely. Antibiotics is the main thing, You know, if you are in your neighborhood and you're sick and you got the same sore throat or the same ear, nose, and throat infection that your cousin had last week, and he got better taking erythromycin or taking CPAC or whatever, you're not going to go to the doctor and get a prescription. They come back to, no, you're gonna send someone, you know, or you're gonna go yourself to the pharmacy in the corner and say, I need some erythromycin. I got the same shit my cousin had last week, and I'm going to I'm going to take the same meds he took. You know, it's just for people like in some of these countries, it's just much easier. Fewer people have cars. You know, going to doctor's office is usually a hassle, long lines. Shit's just not great. So yeah, it's just kind of the way it works. It's illegal. It's on the books, bro. It's on the books everywhere. Like, it's on the books in Mexico, Colombia, everywhere. It's illegal to manufacture steroids, sell them. It's illegal to sell certain veterinarian drugs without a prescription, without a licensed veterinarian request. Like, all this stuff is in the books. It's just like law enforcement in some of these countries has got their hands full. It's got their handfuls just kind of even trying to go after and look for crimes that have huge problems with a lot of victims in some of these real crimes that go on. So they just don't spend time on some of these kind of administrative victimless crimes. You know what I mean? Like, they're, to the grand scale of things going on in some of these countries and how shorthanded law enforcement is, they're just not worried about, you know, a consenting transaction between a pharmacist and a person. And the way they keep addictive drugs, like at least in Colombia, the way they keep addictive drugs like Valium, like Adderall, like opiates, the way they keep those from the general public is they don't allow pharmacists to dispense those drugs. For those drugs, you have to walk into what basically is a government building and get them from the government dispensary, government pharmacy. So in Colombia, if you get a script for Adderall or Ritalin or codeine or Xanax or any of those high, narcotics or drugs that can be abused and addictive, those drugs, your pharmacist on the corner just won't have access to them. He won't. I think the last one that you could get on a corner was Valium. It was under, I think it was a brand called Solpidem, and they took that off the market just under 5 years ago because grandmas were starting to abuse it. So the way that a lot of these countries deal with the pharmacist not flooding the streets with bad drugs is basically by making the government the only place you can get those drugs. But anything else, everything from testosterone to antibiotics to Novadex to dick pills, to Cialis, to all this stuff that's not going to wreck your whole community. It's not going to make everybody an addict. It's just kind of a real personal thing. If someone takes it or not, what kind of side effects they can have down the road, that kind of stuff. Really, pharmacists can dispense whatever they want, and nobody's ever going to come and bother them about it in some of these countries.
All right. So I hope that answers it for sure. Rick's on definitely on a roll. So this is the next one. We're going to talk about Winstrol a little bit, but we're going to talk about suspension versus tablets. This question came up, and I've taken the suspension. It's like a milk, looks like milk. And a funny story, I had one of my in-laws one time was, over the weekend, spending the weekend with us, and they all suspected, that I wasn't messing around with steroids, and they kind of dropped hints about it. But what's funny is we were eating, and I had some suspension in a little bottle, looked like milk. So I can't, sitting watching TV, and I brung my meal to the table, and then I brung my Winstrol, and I sat the Winstrol next to my meal, and I was eating my meal, and then I drank the Winstrol in front of my in-law, and he kind of gave me a look. I mean, he had no fucking clue what it was, but I wonder if he thought if he thought it was steroids. It looked like a little, little thing of milk. I don't know what he thought. What do you think he would think there? Do you think it was a little thing of alcohol? Do you think it was a little, what do you think it was? Because it looks like milk,
Yeah, I mean, it does. If it separates and looks kind of weird and lumpy if you let it sit for a long time. But once you shake it up, once you shake up that water-based suspension, or you even run it under warm water, it gets quite milky. I think, I looked at the question. I'm like, this question might be sort of obsolete at this point. I mean, I at least the most popular labs out there, the good ones, they're making Winstrol in oil-based. Like I started seeing Winstrol show up in oil-based about 10 years ago, almost now, and it doesn't separate. It's not milky. It doesn't look weird, and Winstrol had been water-based for ages, from the Sambonis you could buy from Spain all the way to all of the veterinarian grade Winstrol that you can get. That was really, really good stuff from Quality Vet and Dencal, all that stuff. It's always been kind of this milky liquid, but nowadays is all in oil-based. And are there any real is it any one better than the other? And no, the injections, I like the injections because you can do one a day. You can do one a day. When the crystalline hormone is in that muscle, it takes it longer to get processed and go through your body to your body and through it than when you're ingesting it. When you're ingesting, your stomach is and your tract is made to do that all day long, to just take stuff in, break it down, push it through. But your muscles are not really meant to have a foreign substance placed in between its cells and then just get rid of it. It can do it. Takes it longer than the digestive system. Hence, when you take the tablets, you got to take them throughout the day. When you inject, you can just shoot once a day and be in the muscle and be pretty darn good with it. Now, is there is there one is there one better than the other? It's just personal preference. They're both going to go through the liver. Even the injectable Winstrol, when it hits your bloodstream, it'll pass through the liver. It'll have to at some point anyway. Everything in your blood will pass through your liver and kidneys. It'll do it anyway. So you're not safe from liver toxicity. It's just maybe more convenient in the dosing, or maybe you find it more convenient to do the actual tablets, because then you could kind of time your tablet intake around your training, which some people kind of like to do. Some people like to time their steroid intake around their training. So I don't know. I think either or is great. And nowadays unless you could find human grade Winstrol, unless you could find legitimate veterinarian Winstrol, you're going to have a hard time finding water-based Winstrol nowadays, I think, brother. I think the majority of good brands out there are making oil-based Winstrol. And I'm sure there's still some water-based Winstrol floating around out there, just for the people that are nostalgic for that. But I think the oil-based Winstrol is better. It doesn't clog going through the needle like suspension. Dude, I've some of that stuff from Dencal, some of these Sambones, like, you had to really put it under warm water for a little while and shake it so that it wouldn't clog your needle, to make sure that the crystals spread a little bit and unlocked, when they were lumped together, and you could actually get a smooth injection, because that's just the way the steroids behave in the water. They don't fully suspend, they fall out. Now in the oil, you don't get that. You don't get the cloudiness. You don't get anything in the oil-based Winstrol, and it's smooth through the needle. I think it's just a superior option to the water-based stuff. And look, when it comes to weaning, I've done it I've done it orally and I've done injections, but like there was a time where I was set on doing oral Winstrol, because it just fit in with my training program, or what I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of take it a little bit at certain times of the day. And when I did my math, milligram per milligram, it was cheaper for me to, at that point, grab it in an oil-based injectable, even though I had planned to just kind of run it as an oral. I wanted to journal a little bit some of the differences I was feeling at that time. And I just bought the oil-based Winstrol and measured it out with a pin and just shot it under my tongue and drank it 3 times a day, 4 times a day, just because, milligram per milligram, it was a cheaper, better buy than to grab the capsules. And I was pretty confident in myself that I could dose it out properly with a sling pin. And so I did that during that cycle, during that moment. And, you could too. You can drink the Winstrol. That was back in the 2000s. I would say it was the early 2000s. I would say it was one of the top questions on the forums was, can you actually, was the question, can you drink the Winstrol? And, I've done it, just price shopping and trying to get a cheaper price per milligram.
Yeah, definitely. I much prefer to drink. I'm surprised you said you like to inject it. Now, is the oil-based Winstrol? I've never injected the oil-based Winstrol. I've injected the suspension, though. Very painful. Does the oil-based Winstrol hurt?
Oh, all that shit hurts, but it's just it's a much smoother shot. Like when you shot the suspension, did you ever get the needle clogging on you a little bit when you're pushing? You're kind of pushing, it just stops. Then you got to pull and push and pull.
No, I didn't have an issue. No, it just went right through, but it hurt like hell. Did
you run it under warm water? Or did you just have a really good lab that made it?
No, I didn't run it underwater. Mm-mm.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, I mean, with the stuff we used to get from Dencal and some of the stuff from back in the day, early days, I mean, you'd have that issue. You'd want to run it under warm water to avoid that, and even then, you still might get a little bit of crystal clumping in the needle. And I guess, look, I've always used 23 and 25 gauge needles for injecting. I'm sure if you were using like a 20 gauge needle or something, it might flow right through. But yeah, I mean, it's that was kind of my experience with it, having some crystallization of the stuff that I had.
All right, so last question, buddy. Super Bowl Sunday. It's going to be the Bengals and the Rams. So the Rams are 4.5-point favorites. Cheapest ticket, if you want the worst seats in the house, $4,400. So Rick is taking me to my first Super Bowl Sunday. So he's buying the tickets. So Rick, I really thank you for this gift. And who are you cheering for?
What's the Sunday? What are you talking about? I don't want, you know, I don't watch
You didn't know
organized
you're
sport.
taking me to the Super Bowl?
No, I had no idea.
You didn't get the memo?
Last couple of days, somebody mentioned Super Bowl is coming up. So I mean, I know what the Super Bowl is, but yeah, somebody mentioned it to me.
Yeah. So you're not going to be watching the Super Bowl.
I'm pretty pumped up for the Israel Adesanya and Robert Whitaker of rematch tomorrow night. So I'm looking forward to watching Derek Lewis and Ty fight, and Jarrett Cannonier with Derek Brunson. I mean, there's some decent fights actually tomorrow night. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. Good fights. But as far as like, I'm not really much into organized team sports.
Yeah. I'm just messing with you. Do you know Roman numerals?
Yeah, for sure.
So LVI, that's the Super Bowl number. So what number does that come out to?
I'll Google it right now.
No, don't Google it. You're supposed to know this.
I don't. The only Roman numeral I don't remember L's. Yeah. So it represents
L is 50.
So this is the 56.
Exactly. Because L is 50, V is 5, and then the I is 1. So it's number 56. Super Bowl 56.
Super Bowl 56.
Yes, sir. Yep. By the time we die, they'll be up to 100 Super Bowls. So we'll be up to number 5,000 podcasts, and they'll be up to 100 Super Bowls.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So who do you think is going to win? Who do you place your bets on? I know you're a betting
Well, I don't
man.
believe in gambling, sir, but I don't endorse gambling. But if I had to pick a team in this podcast, if I had to
you only gamble on the tables.
Right? I only gamble on the strippers. But if I had to pick a team, I'd go with the Rams because I just think they're the superior team all around. I think the Bengals a little bit of a Cinderella story. They kind of had a little bit, a little Cinderella story going. I don't like the Super Bowl at all, buddy. I don't think either team is the best team. I think the two best teams are the Chiefs and Bills, and neither one are in the Super Bowl. So I think these teams are like not even top 5 teams in the NFL, like no doubt. So I don't think we're going to be picking the best team. I don't know if the same thing happens in your MMA shit, but some years this is what happens, some teams just peak at the right time and they get into the Super Bowl. But I think the Rams are the better team. I would think that the Rams would win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. So that's who I'm picking. All right.
So what's the over and under then? How would you translate that into bet talk? What's over and under? Like how would you place your bet?
Well, the Rams are 4.5-point favorites. So you would take the Rams and eat that spread. So the Rams would have to win by at least 4.5 points. So they have to win by 5 points or more for you to win that bet. And then the over under is 48.5, meaning that's the total amount of points scored between two teams. And I would go over on that one as well. I think there's going to be at least 50 points scored in this game. So I would go on the over, and I would take the Rams in this.
So let's say you placed a bet for $1,000 by your prescription of how the score is going to go. How much could you win?
Well, the bookie, yeah. So you would double your money minus the 10% juice that the bookie's charging you. So you'd win 900 if you were right. If you did a bet on the spread. Now, if you bet on the money line, which is a straight up bet, the money line is minus 200 for the Rams. So if you bet 1,000, you'd win 500 only. Because it's minus 200, but if you pick Cincinnati, they're plus 160. So if you bet 100 on Cincinnati, you would win $160. See what I'm saying?
Wow.
So you win 60%. But you notice that there's a spread on that money line, because that's how the bookie makes their money. So the more action the bookies make their money off the juice. If it's like they try to balance each side. So they want like $1 million bet on one side, $1 million bet on the other. This way, no matter what happens, the bookie will still pocket the 10% of that million on each side. That's how bookies make money. But say they bet 2 million on one side and 1 million on the other side, and that one side that 2 million was bet on wins, then the bookie takes a hit.
Gotcha.
That's how bookies make money. But over the long term, you would think that the bookies would pull a profit, because the more people bet, the more it balances out. The implied odds balances out. So the bookies are pocketing 10% off every bet. So over time, you would think that they would pull a profit, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes there's been Super Bowls where bookies have lost a lot of money because there's been more bets on one side, and then that side happened to go against the bookie. So yeah, that's how it works. Yeah.
Wow, you're about as knowledgeable about this as I am about steroid manufacturing practices. It's pretty interesting.
I know, right?
For a guy that doesn't gamble, doesn't like gambling, you know quite a lot.
I used to sports gamble, but I quit. You know what? One of the things about sports gambling is I didn't like it. It took away the fun of the game, just watching the game and enjoying the game and enjoying, how it went. Does that make sense? Like if you gamble on an MMA fight and then you got money on it, it changes the way, it takes the fun out of it, because now you're getting all emotional over money.
I'm too cheap to gamble. I just don't do it. I hate doing it. Yeah, too cheap.
Well, like I just explained to you, the bookies make 10% every time you bet. So over time, you have to be right at least 60% of the time just to break even. So really, it doesn't work in your favor. Now, when I sports gambled, I actually walked away with $10,000 in my pocket and then quit. I made 15 grand, then took 10,000 off and left the 5 grand in there, then gambled away the 5 grand. But I still ended up with 10 grand in my pocket. That's the only way to do it. If I would have kept gambling over time and the bookie's taking 10%, 10%, 10% over time, it's going to eventually, wear my money down over time, unless you're really, really lucky and really, really good at it, which some people are. But most of the people, these gamblers and shit on social media, they have all these followers and they put out bets. They don't make the money off gambling itself. They make the money off memberships. Selling you $100 a month membership to sign up where you get access to their picks. That's how they make their money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel
they don't make money off actually gambling their own money. So it's a bunch of bullshit. And there was actually a Real Sports with Brian Gumbel story about gambling recently on HBO. Very, very good story about people who've gambled money and ended up getting divorced, ended up committing suicide, all kinds of different things. And that's really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting because they'll lose money and then they'll try to make it back. And then they'll steal money from their wife, they'll steal money from family, they'll steal money from friends, whatever, to try to make the money back. And in the process, they might win a little back, and then that will push them to keep going. And then in the process, they end up losing more. So now they're in a bigger hole. So gambling is really not something I endorse. Just enjoy the Super Bowl, enjoy the game, enjoy the love of the game. And, there's no reason to add money to the situation and be emotional about it. So,
the only person that I've seen that had a somewhat healthy relationship with gambling is many, many years ago. I used to work at this nightclub. I was did security and other things for a nightclub. And one of the owners, he was a admitted gambler. I mean, he had money on every game, on every sport. And the way he explained it to me, and he liked going to Atlantic City, was really close right there in New York. And he'd go to Atlantic City a week in the month, and then he'd hit Vegas up for a week or two, a couple of times a year. And he would be doing sports betting in between. And what he explained to me is that he just took a chunk. He said some years it was 40, other years as much as $60,000 out of his income that he set aside, and that was his play gambling money. And he was already ready at the beginning of the year to play out and lose all of that money. He said that removing from his mind that he would ever make any money gambling, instead that it was an expense, and if he was hot and he was winning, he would enjoy the money longer. But if he was called and he was losing, he would set a limit for how much he would lose for the year. And he told me a couple of stories of him going to Atlantic City with I think he set aside 12 grand for that trip, $12,000. And he said he got there, and 2 days later he was up about over 100 grand.
Wow.
And yeah, and he said what he did was he called up and made some arrangements to stay an extra 3 days and play out the 150 grand. He just said he said, look, I went to play, and I'm just going to play and get comped, because he liked getting comped treatment and getting player treatment. And if I'm up, I'm just going to stay an extra couple of days and play that money out, so I get a free trip for longer. And if I'm down, if I lose my money the first night, then I pack it up and I go home a night or two early, or I just stay and do other things but not gamble. But he said I've been up a couple of trips where it's like it's time to go home, and I'm up 3-4 times what I came there with. I just extend my trip and stay it out. And I thought, I thought it was out of all the people that have ran across that gamble, because apparently gambling is a big problem for a lot of folks. A lot of people have issues with it. So he's one of the ones that I thought had it more kind of under control, because he didn't think he could ever win. So it took maybe a lot of the addiction aspect out of it. But out of everybody I've met, he was probably, but he's still playing with a dragon. I mean, it's gonna bite you one day. You can't control it. There was a dude that I met. We went to Vegas for a photo shoot. First time I'd ever went there before I decided to move there for a few years. And great photo shoot, model, all that. And the guy that was taking pictures, he was back in a hotel room with us. We're chatting, and him and his brother were there, and we just started talking about gambling a little bit. And I said, I just told him I wasn't really into gambling, but I like playing 21 with friends. Like would play, 21 with friends, and I was pretty damn good at it. And he said, "Oh, you should play on the tables. You play on the tables, but get comp drinks, this and that." This is almost like 8 years ago. So I go, all right, well, let's go check it out, I guess. And on the way there, we start talking, and I could see like their eyes bubbling, like I could see something going on. And then I get there, and I just like, take out a couple $100, and I, sit at a table with a low minimum. And I played for, I don't know, just a few minutes, and I lost some money, and my drink didn't come fast enough for the amount of money I lost. So I was just like, fuck that, I'm done. I'm out of here. So as the free drink came, I cashed out. I was just done. I left. And then I look around, and these guys are already at like other tables sitting down, like really taking it real serious. And I waited around for them a little bit. Anyway, we talked a little bit more that night, and they confessed to me, like, sometimes he'll go in there with the money to pay the rent or pay his electricity bill, and he'll try to make a little bit extra on that money. And sometimes he wins, sometimes he squanders his money. And the model, she was kind of his girlfriend, and she was like upset about him sitting on the tables. Like I saw, like that was my first time really coming in contact with someone that I could see visibly had a real problem with gambling. Like I could see it just to change, like Golem, like the change in his attitude, his personality, like the way he acted was really kind of, and I realized, like, holy shit, this is a thing. Like this is really something that could, like fuck somebody up. Like this guy is talking about taking his rent money and coming in here and trying to double it. I'm going to double my rent money, and sometimes he won't. Sometimes he sometimes he'd gamble away half of it, or his electricity bill, or things like that. And I thought that was real interesting, because I lost like $50 in a matter of a few minutes, and I was just like, all right, I'm done. Where's my drink? Like I didn't even get a free drink. Like where's I'm out. I'm done. And that was like I think I've sat at tables maybe twice. Didn't last more than half hour each time, more than a few minutes. It's just not for me. But I see it, like I see the appeal in people. I see what it does to people. I see like I can see it, dude. It's crazy. Yeah, gambling is one of those addictions, man. It's hard.
Yeah, and that Real Sports episode was quite good, and they're talking about how states are expanding sports gambling, and they're targeting. Guess who they're targeting, Rick? Young males. The young male demographic is the most, susceptible to this, and they'll fall prey to these grifters on social media that claim, yeah, sign up for my $100 a month subscription and I'll give you all the picks of the game. Nobody knows what's going to happen, guys. Nobody fucking knows. All right. Nobody can predict, unless you're psychic and you can predict games, which I have before, by the way. I've had dreams about how the game would turn out, but like, unless you get like a psychic vision or something and what the game, you can't pick games. These guys are phonies. So don't fall victim to this. Stay away from gambling, guys. There's no need. Just enjoy sports. Enjoy.
So when you have a vision of or a dream of who's going to win, Steve, do you put money on it? Then is that like a good short way for you to know you're going to win, or do you refrain from betting even when you get a vision about it?
I basically have people that I tell, and they do whatever they want with that information. So, but
Gotcha,
they don't,
gotcha.
they do whatever they want with the information. Let's put it that way. Because what happens is, let's say I was to bet on it, and that would kind of change it. That would kind of change the aura of the situation. So I'm not looking to profit from it, because that would change.
Are you afraid? Are you afraid you'll lose your superpowers if you use them for monetary gain?
There's a difference between dreaming that you're going to bet on a game and dreaming of a final score of the game. Does that make sense? So let's say I dreamt that I was going to bet on a game and I went and bet on the game. Okay, that doesn't mean I'm going to win my bet. You see what I'm saying? So there's a difference. So when you mix in gambling with, what the score is going to be, then you end up screwing yourself in the process. You see what I'm saying? So that's where the issue comes from. Yeah, that's what I've actually predicted the score of a game, and the team had the ball like the 1 yard line, right? I predicted the score of a game would be 17-14, and the team had the ball the 1 yard line, and they're about to go in for a touchdown. And I told a person in the room, I was like, I dreamt the score was 17-14. They're not going to score. And the person looked at me like, what do you mean they're not going to score? Even if they don't make it, they're going to probably kick a field goal, whatever. I said, trust me, it's first and goal on the 1 yard line. And they hand the ball off and the guy fumbles it and the other team recovers. And I was like, see, there you go. I told you they wouldn't score. It was like a fluke thing that happened. So yeah, I can definitely, I think as you get, it's nice. I wish I could predict the fucking lottery number. That would be nice, right?
Yeah, it does get up there sometimes, doesn't it? It gets up to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, even if I hit the lottery, buddy, I'm still going to do these podcasts because we need to spread the information. We need to help people. You understand? I would still do this podcast. Even if I was a billionaire, I would still do this podcast.
It's great. When you're doing something you love every day, it's just a great feeling. It's incredible.
Make you feel great. All right, guys. So this is
stop it with the accents. Oh, Mr. Accent. Here you go again. We're having a good conversation. We're having a good conversation, real pleasant, and you drop these weird accents out of
no. So that's Borat.
That's Borat?
Borat Sakadiev.
I don't see it. I don't see it, bro.
Borat Sakadiev.
I don't say something else. Let me see if I can picture Borat.
I like.
That was okay.
It's good.
That was all right. That wasn't. You got to do a little more. No, I mean you got to do like a couple of sentences or something for me to gauge it. Those two were okay.
I like it too much.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
No good, huh?
Well, you're doing a couple words and you're doing well, but I mean, you got to, if you're going to claim Borat, like you got to be able to do the whole thing.
Exactly.
That dude is incredible. He's a funny individual.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. This is another episode. We will talk to you guys next week. Keep the questions coming. Take care.
Have a good one, Steve. Have a good one, guys.
Guys, this is the required legal disclaimer. We are only sharing our experience from years of steroid use. We are not doctors, and none of what we say should be regarded as medical advice. Always check with your doctor before taking any drugs or starting any training program.